The call came at 3:17 a.m., my phone buzzing on the nightstand, jolting me awake. It was my mother, sobbing. "It's Aunt Marilyn, she's gone." My mind immediately went to the worst, a heart attack, an accident. But what my mother said next was somehow even more shocking. "She's gone to Nigeria to meet her fiancé." I sat up, suddenly wide awake. "Her what?" "Her fiancé," my mother repeated, her voice breaking. "Some man she met online. Kevin, she's emptied her accounts, sold her jewelry, even took out a second mortgage on her house. We think she sent him nearly $250,000. I couldn't process what I was hearing. This was Aunt Marilyn we were talking about. The same woman who once returned to a grocery store because they'd undercharged her by $1.37. The retired math teacher who did everyone's taxes because she could spot errors the accountants missed. "That's impossible," I said. "Marilyn would never fall for something like that." But she had. And our family was about to embark on a journey that would take us from the depths of despair to an unexpected revenge that none of us could have imagined. My name is Kevin. I'm 38, an IT security consultant in Boston. Aunt Marilyn isn't actually my aunt by blood. She was my mother's college roommate who became family. After my father left when I was 7, Marilyn was there, helping my mom raise me, never missing a baseball game or school event. She was the one who paid for my first computer, sparking my interest in technology. In many ways, I owed my career to her, and now she was being taken for everything she had. "I need to see exactly what's happening," I told my mother. "I'm booking a flight home, tonight." 6 hours later, I was on a plane to Minneapolis, where both my mother and Marilyn lived, just 3 blocks apart in the same quiet suburb they'd moved to after they both retired from teaching. I spent the flight researching romance scams, and what I found terrified me. Sophisticated international networks targeting vulnerable older adults, psychological manipulation refined to an art form, victims losing their entire life savings, sometimes even taking their own lives when they realized what had happened. By the time I landed, my fear had hardened into resolve. I wasn't going to let this happen. Not to Marilyn. My mother met me at the airport, looking 10 years older than when I'd seen her at Christmas just 2 months earlier. "Amy caught her packing," she explained as we drove. "She's planning to leave tomorrow. Lagos, Nigeria, one-way ticket." Amy was my cousin, actually Marilyn's niece. She'd stopped by unexpectedly the previous evening and found Marilyn surrounded by suitcases. "What did Marilyn say when Amy confronted her?" I asked. My mother's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. "She said she was in love, that William had finally arranged for her to come to him after months of trying, that they were getting married in Lagos, then returning to his mansion in Virginia once his contract ended next month." "William?" "William Carter, supposedly an American petroleum engineer working on a rig off the Nigerian coast, widowed 5 years ago, has a daughter in medical school at Johns Hopkins." My mother's voice was flat, reciting facts she clearly didn't believe. "Marilyn says they connected on Facebook last January. Been talking every day since. When we arrived at Marilyn's modest 2-story home, the curtains were drawn. My cousin Amy met us at the door, her eyes red from crying. "She's upstairs," Amy whispered, "packing again. She threw me out last night, but I came back this morning. Used my key. I found Marilyn in her bedroom, meticulously folding clothes into a large suitcase. At 62, she still dyed her hair the same chestnut brown she'd worn all her life. But her face, normally animated and quick to smile, looked haggard. There were dark circles under her eyes. "Kevin," she exclaimed when she saw me, genuine happiness breaking through. "What a wonderful surprise. Did your mother tell you my news? I'm getting married." I hugged her, feeling how thin she'd become. "That's why I'm here, Marilyn, to talk about this. William." Her smile faltered for just a moment before returning, brittle now. "Isn't it wonderful? After losing Phil, I never thought I'd find love again. But William he's everything I could have hoped for. Smart, kind, successful. And you've never met him in person?" Her hands resumed their folding, smoothing a blouse with unnecessary precision. "Well, no, not yet, but we video chat all the time. Can I see a picture of him?" She brightened, grabbing her phone from the nightstand. "Of course. Look how handsome he is." The man in the photos was indeed handsome. Silver-haired, tanned, with crinkles around blue eyes that suggested a lifetime of laughter. In some photos, he wore business attire. In others, a military uniform. "He served in the Gulf War before becoming an engineer," Marilyn explained proudly. 20 years in the Army Reserve." I nodded, studying the photos. Something felt off about them. Too perfect. Too posed, but I couldn't put my finger on it yet. "Marilyn," I said gently, "how much money have you sent William?" Her smile disappeared completely. "That's none of your business, Kevin. I'm a grown woman who can manage her own finances. I'm just concerned. Well, don't be, she snapped, an edge entering her voice I'd never heard before. William has been nothing but generous. Yes, he's had some temporary financial difficulties because of banking restrictions in Nigeria. And yes, I've helped him. That's what partners do. They help each other. And once I get there tomorrow, all his assets will be freed up and he'll pay me back every penny, with interest. I tried a different approach. These banking issues, what exactly are they? Marilyn sighed, as if explaining something to a slow student. It's complicated. The Nigerian government froze foreign workers' accounts as part of a corruption investigation. William's company is legitimate, but caught in the crossfire. He just needs certain fees paid to unlock everything. She hesitated. And there were some medical emergencies with his daughter, and equipment his team needed that the company wouldn't cover because of the banking freeze. The classic scammer playbook. I'd read about all these scenarios on the flight, but pointing that out would only make her defensive. Can I see some of your conversations with him? I asked. I'd love to get to know the man who's making you so happy. A calculated risk. If she refused, I'd know she had doubts herself. Marilyn hesitated, then handed me her phone. His messages are so beautiful. You'll see. For the next hour, I scrolled through months of Facebook messages and texts. William's messages were indeed beautiful and expertly crafted, romantic without being over the top, personal details that showed he was listening, consistent emotional support, and then sprinkled throughout the emergencies, the requests, always with promises of repayment, always with apologies for the inconvenience. I watched Marilyn's responses evolve from friendly to deeply intimate, from cautious offers of small amounts to increasingly desperate financial commitments. Most disturbing were the photos she'd sent. Nothing inappropriate, but pictures of her home, her car, bank statements meant to prove she'd sent money. The scammer now had a complete picture of her life and assets. He's going to call at 4 o'clock, Marilyn said, checking her watch. You can talk to him yourself. Perfect. At exactly 4 p.m., her phone rang. Marilyn answered, putting it on speaker. Hello, my love, came a deep male voice with what sounded like a British-American accent. How are the preparations coming? Wonderfully, William. And guess who's here? My nephew Kevin came all the way from Boston to see me off. There was a pause. How nice. Hello, Kevin. Hi, William, I said, keeping my tone friendly. Great to finally talk to the man who swept my aunt off her feet. Another pause. Yes, well, Marilyn is a very special woman. She certainly is. So special that I'm curious about a few things, like why a petroleum engineer would need money from a retired teacher. Or why your military photos show mismatched insignia from different branches and ranks? Kevin? Marilyn gasped. I don't know what you're talking about, William said, his accent slipping slightly. I think you do. I've spent the last 15 years in cybersecurity, William. If that's even your name. It took me about 10 minutes to discover the photos you've been sending are stock images from a modeling agency. The real man in those pictures is a retired banker from Stockholm named Anders Lindberg. That's ridiculous, William sputtered, but I could hear the panic in his voice. Marilyn, your nephew is trying to ruin our happiness. Remember what I told you about jealous family members? Classic isolation tactic. I countered quickly. Marilyn, look at this. I pulled up the results of a reverse image search I'd done on my phone, showing the original stock photos alongside William's profile pictures. She stared at the screen, color draining from her face. William, I continued, shall we discuss the banking details you've provided Marilyn? The ones that trace back to accounts in Lagos, Accra, and surprisingly, Atlanta? The ones I've already forwarded to the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center? You have no idea who you're dealing with, William hissed, all pretense of the refined engineer gone. If you know what's good for… I ended the call and turned to Marilyn, expecting anger. Instead, she looked shattered. It's not true, she whispered. It can't be. But I could see in her eyes that part of her had known, had always known. She just hadn't been ready to admit it. What followed was the hardest conversation of our lives. Amy and my mother joined us. We went through everything. The money transfers, the inconsistent stories, the classic red flags, the photos that couldn't possibly be real, the video calls that were always dark or glitchy, making it hard to see William clearly. 243,000, Marilyn finally admitted, her voice hollow. That's what I've sent over the past 10 months. The room fell silent. It was even worse than we'd thought. My retirement account, second mortgage, credit cards. I even borrowed $15,000 from my sister. She looked at Amy. Your mother doesn't know yet. I told her it was for medical bills. My mind was racing. This wasn't just about stopping Marilyn from going to Nigeria anymore. This was about picking up the pieces of her life. And maybe, just maybe, getting some of that money back. Marilyn, I said, taking her hands, I know this is overwhelming, but I need you to trust me now. We can still fight back, but I need access to everything. Your accounts, emails, phone records, all communication you've had with this person. She looked up, a spark returning to her eyes. Fight back? How? These scammers think they're untouchable. They're not. But every hour matters now. That night, while Marilyn finally slept with the help of a mild sedative from her doctor, I went through her laptop. The rabbit hole went deeper than I'd imagined. Not just Facebook messages and texts, but emails, WhatsApp conversations, even a shared Google Drive where she'd uploaded financial documents to prove she'd sent payments. I systematically downloaded everything, taking screenshots, preserving the digital trail. The wire transfers were disturbing, starting small at $2,500, gradually increasing to $30,000 for an emergency surgery for William's daughter. Most had gone to Nigerian accounts, some to Ghana, but as I'd noticed earlier, 2 substantial transfers had gone to accounts in Atlanta, Georgia. That was unusual. Romance scammers typically operated outside U.S. jurisdiction. Those domestic accounts could be our break. At 2 a.m., I drafted an email from Marilyn's account to William, I know everything. I've identified your real identity. All your banking information has been forwarded to the FBI's IC3 division, Interpol, and Nigerian authorities. My nephew is a cybersecurity expert who has traced all transactions. Expect a visit from law enforcement soon. I didn't send it, not yet. First, we needed to secure what was left of Marilyn's assets and establish a paper trail with authorities. Morning brought new resolve. I helped Marilyn cancel her flight to Nigeria, then drove her to the local police station. The officer who took our statement was sympathetic but not optimistic. These international scams are nearly impossible to prosecute, he explained. We'll file the report, but don't get your hopes up. I wasn't deterred. What about the transfers to Atlanta? Those crossed state lines. That's federal jurisdiction. The officer looked more interested. You have documentation of those? Complete records. Account numbers, dates, amounts. He nodded. That I can work with. Let me make a call. While Marilyn gave her statement, I stepped outside to call an old college friend, Mike Levin. We'd studied computer science together before his career took him into law enforcement. Last I heard, he was with the Minneapolis field office of the FBI working in financial crimes. Mike, it's Kevin Dawson. I need your help. I explained the situation. Mike listened without interrupting. The Atlanta connection is interesting, he said when I finished. Could be money mules, U.S. residents who receive funds and forward them overseas for a cut. We've been tracking several romance scam networks with U.S.-based accomplices. Can you help us? Officially, these cases usually go through IC3. And honestly, most don't get investigated individually unless they're part of a larger pattern we're already working. He paused. But send me what you have, especially those Atlanta accounts. No promises, but I'll take a look. When I returned inside, the local officer was explaining to Marilyn the reality of romance scams, how sophisticated they were, how rarely the perpetrators were caught, how almost no one ever recovered their money. Marilyn sat very still, her hands folded in her lap, nodding mechanically as tears streamed down her face. Seeing her like this, proud, intelligent Marilyn reduced to this hollow shell, filled me with cold fury. This isn't over, I told her as we left the station. Not by a long shot. Back at her house, family had gathered. Marilyn's sister had driven up from Rochester. My mother was making coffee. Amy was fielding concerned calls from friends who'd heard something was wrong. I need to talk to everyone, Marilyn announced suddenly, her voice stronger than it had been all day. We gathered in the living room, the same room where she'd helped me with algebra homework, where she'd hosted Christmas dinners after my mom's place became too small for the expanding family, where she and Uncle Phil had renewed their vows on their 30th anniversary, just months before his cancer diagnosis. I've been scammed, she said plainly. I was fooled by someone pretending to be in love with me. I sent him nearly $250,000. I was about to fly to Nigeria to meet someone who doesn't exist. She took a deep breath. I'm not asking for pity. I'm not even asking for help, though I'll need it. What I'm asking is that you don't treat me like I'm stupid. I made a terrible mistake, but I'm still me. Her voice cracked slightly. And I want to fight back. I want to make sure this doesn't happen to anyone else. The room was silent. Then her sister stood and embraced her. Whatever you need, she whispered. That embrace seemed to break a dam. For the next hour, Marilyn shared everything. How lonely she'd been after Phil died. How William had seemed to understand her grief. How the scam had progressed so gradually she barely noticed. How by the time she had doubts, she'd already invested so much emotionally and financially that admitting the truth seemed impossible. It wasn't just about being fooled romantically, she explained. It was about being fooled, period. I've spent my life being careful, being smart, To admit I'd fallen for something like this, I couldn't face it. As family members offered support, my phone buzzed. A text from Mike. Call me. I stepped onto the porch. What have you got? Those Atlanta accounts? They're on our radar. Part of an investigation we've been building for months. Your aunt's case could be helpful. How soon can you get her on a video call? Things moved quickly after that. Within hours, Marilyn was giving a formal statement to Mike and 2 other FBI agents via secure video link. She provided every detail she could remember: conversations, transfers, the strange requests William had made, the stories that never quite added up. Those accounts in Atlanta belong to what we call money mules, Mike explained. U.S. residents who receive fraudulent funds and forward them overseas, keeping a percentage. We've had them under surveillance, but connecting them to specific scam victims helps build our case. Will this help get Marilyn's money back? I asked. Possibly some of it. The more recent transfers have a better chance. But more importantly, her testimony helps us connect dots. This isn't just one scammer. It's a sophisticated network. As we ended the call, Mike made one last comment. Kevin, you may have inadvertently done us a favor. These networks usually abandon victims once they're tapped out, but they spend months grooming targets. Sometimes, if we can control the communication, we can use that relationship. What are you suggesting? Let us handle this from here. But don't be surprised if we ask your aunt to continue communicating under our guidance. That night, I finally sent the email I'd drafted to William, but modified per the FBI's instructions. Less accusatory, more confused and concerned. We needed him to keep responding rather than disappearing. His reply came within minutes. My love, there's been a terrible misunderstanding. Your nephew is confused. I can explain everything. What followed was a masterclass in manipulation. William spent 1,500 words explaining away every inconsistency, promising to return all her money, swearing his undying love. If I hadn't seen the evidence myself, even I might have been swayed by the performance. The FBI monitored every communication over the next 2 weeks. Under their guidance, Marilyn reluctantly played along, expressing doubts but not cutting contact completely. She even agreed to send one more small transfer, $500 of FBI funds, to create a fresh evidence trail. Meanwhile, I helped her begin the painful process of financial recovery. Credit card companies froze her accounts and initiated fraud investigations. She put her house on the market. She couldn't afford the second mortgage. We moved her temporarily into my mother's spare bedroom while she searched for an apartment she could afford on what remained of her pension. I'll have to go back to work, she said one evening as we sorted through her bills. Maybe substitute teaching. One step at a time, I told her. Let's see what happens with the investigation. What happened was something none of us expected. 3 weeks after our initial report, Mike called. We're moving on the Atlanta Money Mules tomorrow. Can you bring Marilyn to our field office? There's something she should see. The next morning, we sat in a conference room at the FBI field office in Minneapolis. Mike entered, looking like he hadn't slept in days. First, the Atlanta operation was successful. 2 arrests, both individuals connected to your case, Marilyn. They've already started cooperating in exchange for reduced charges. What does that mean for us? I asked. It means we now have names, locations, and specific details about the Nigerian operation, including the identity of William Carter. He turned to Marilyn. His real name is Emmanuel Adebayo. He's 31, operates out of Lagos, and is part of a sophisticated network we've been tracking for years. Marilyn's face registered shock. 31? I'm twice his age. Age doesn't matter to these people. Only the potential for financial gain. Mike pushed a folder across the table. We've frozen several accounts connected to their operation, including one containing approximately $42,000 of your money. That's the good news. And the bad news? I asked. The rest is likely gone. Converted to cryptocurrency, transferred through multiple accounts, spent on luxury goods. These networks are experts at moving money quickly. Marilyn nodded stoically. I understand. At least we stopped them. Actually, Mike said, we might be able to do better than that. He opened his laptop. Nigerian authorities have been surprisingly cooperative, partly because this network has been scamming their own citizens too, and partly because of pressure from our State Department. They're planning a raid on the compound where Adebayo and his team operate, but they need something from you first. From me? Marilyn looked bewildered. We need you to participate in one more video call with William. Only this time, you'll be working directly with our technical team. We need to confirm his location. Marilyn straightened in her chair. For the first time in weeks, I saw a flash of the old Marilyn, the determined woman who had graded papers late into the night, who had nursed her husband through cancer without complaint, who had helped raise me when my own father couldn't be bothered. Tell me what to do, she said. The operation was set for the following day. The FBI technical team established a secure connection from their office. Marilyn would video call William while they traced the connection and gathered digital evidence. Keep him talking for at least 3 minutes, the tech specialist instructed. Ask about the money, his plans, anything to keep him engaged. Marilyn nodded, her hands steady as she prepared for the call. William answered on the second ring, his face partially obscured by poor lighting. A tactic we now understood was deliberate. Marilyn, I've been so worried. Your messages have been strange lately. I've been thinking, William, she said, her voice remarkably calm. About us, about the money I've sent. I know, my love, and I promise, once you come to Nigeria, everything will be resolved. I've been working day and night to fix these banking issues. As he spoke, the FBI technicians worked silently, tracking the signal, confirming the location. They needed just another minute. Actually, Marilyn said, leaning forward slightly, I've decided not to come to Nigeria after all. William's face darkened. What? But our plans. I've also decided I want my money back. All of it. Now, the facade cracked. That's impossible. You know the situation with my accounts. If you just be patient, like I've been patient for 10 months, while you took nearly $250,000 from me, the technician flashed a thumbs up. They had what they needed. But Marilyn wasn't finished. I know who you are, Emmanuel, she said quietly. The man on screen froze. What did you call me? Emmanuel Adebayo, 31 years old, operating out of a compound in Lagos with 13 others. Did you think I'd never find out? His expression transformed completely. The kindly William replaced by a cold, calculating stranger. You've made a mistake, old woman, he snarled. No, Emmanuel. The mistake was yours. You chose the wrong woman to steal from. With that, she ended the call. The room erupted in activity as the technicians confirmed they had everything they needed. Marilyn sat very still, staring at the blank screen. I put my arm around her shoulders. You okay? She nodded slowly. Yes, for the first time in months, I actually am. 48 hours later, Nigerian authorities, coordinating with Interpol, raided the compound in Lagos. They arrested 14 individuals, including Emmanuel Adebayo, and seized computers, phones, and financial records detailing scams totaling more than $17 million from victims worldwide. Even more surprising, they froze assets, cryptocurrency accounts, bank accounts in multiple countries, and property purchased with scam proceeds. The international nature of the crimes and the multiple jurisdictions involved meant recovery would be complicated, but possible. 4 months later, Marilyn received a call from the victim coordinator at the FBI. Due to the asset seizure and international cooperation, she would be receiving restitution of $182,000. Not everything she had lost, but far more than most victims ever see. The money mules in Atlanta received sentences of 5 to 10 years each. Emmanuel Adebayo was extradited to the United States to face charges, as some of his victims were American citizens. He ultimately received 27 years in prison. But for Marilyn, the real closure came during the virtual sentencing hearing, where she was invited to make a victim impact statement. She sat in the same FBI conference room where we had planned the sting, looking directly into the camera at the man who had pretended to love her. I want you to know that you didn't destroy me, she said, her voice unwavering. I lost money, yes. I lost trust, temporarily, but I found something too. Strength I didn't know I had, and family who stood by me even when I pushed them away. I'm still standing, and now everyone knows exactly what you really are. Today, 2 years later, Aunt Marilyn lives in a small condo she purchased with the restitution money. She never did go back to substitute teaching. Instead, she found a new purpose, traveling to senior centers throughout Minnesota to educate others about romance scams. The FBI Victim Services Department actually refers people to her now. She's helped at least 24 other victims come forward, building cases against other scammers. The shame is what protects them, she tells her groups. Once we start talking openly about being victimized, their power disappears. Last month, I visited her new place. It's modest but comfortable, filled with family photos and mementos from her travels. Real travels now, not fantasies spun by a scammer. On her refrigerator is a photo of her with Mike and the FBI team, taken after Adebayo's sentencing. You know what the worst part was? She asked me as we had coffee on her small balcony. It wasn't the money. It was that I really did love the person I thought he was. I mourned that man like a death when I found out he never existed. She paused, watching a pair of cardinals at her bird feeder. But I got to look the real person in the eye and help put him away. How many broken hearts get that kind of closure? As for the William Carter profile, it's gone from Facebook. But every few months, Marilyn searches for those same stolen Swedish models' photos online. Twice now, she's found new fake profiles using those images and reported them immediately. They're still out there, she warns her groups, but so are we. If you know someone being targeted by a romance scammer, don't judge them. Help them. These criminals are professionals at manipulation. They study their victims. They know exactly what emotional buttons to push. Report suspected romance scams to the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center, IC3.gov, the Federal Trade Commission, FTC.gov/complaint, your local police department's financial crimes unit. And remember, real love doesn't ask for wire transfers or gift cards. It doesn't have constant emergencies, and it doesn't need your retirement account to prove itself. Just ask my Aunt Marilyn. She learned that lesson the hardest way possible, but made sure others wouldn't have to.